Welcome, this is Najma Minhas with Global Village Space. In the last few days, we are seeing that India is having growing difficulties in its strategic relationship with Iran. To understand what and to make sense of this, I have with me political commentator and TV anchor Dr. Moeed Pirzada. Moeed, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, this is a very interesting situation, and this is also a situation which is not totally clear. There has been some coverage by Pakistan's leading English newspaper, The Dawn, and then we have to look into the Indian newspapers. But Indian government is trying to keep this situation under the lid because relationship with Iran is of immense strategic significance to India. There is some sort of reversal taking place in that relationship in the backdrop of a growing relationship of Iran with China. India has heavily invested into politically, financially, strategically over the past almost 20 years into the concept of India connecting Chabahar port, developing the Chabahar port, then connecting a railway line from Chabahar port to Zahidan and taking it to Zangraj in an area in Afghanistan. And India did something extraordinary. It also obtained a waiver for the whole project from the Trump administration. But now it's running into difficulties with Iran. It is of immense significance.
But why? Why now is it running into these difficulties, given the fact that it's invested a lot of political capital into this?
It is, first of all, the Indian government didn't really want to admit about the difficulties. Indian papers sort of leaked it and, divulged the information. So then, so the two kind of areas where the difficulties are, first of all is this, that India's large, huge regional international consortium, that India Railway Construction Company, IRCON, probably it's called IRCON. IRCON was supposed to, there was a memorandum of understanding signed between India and Iran, that IRCON was supposed to help Iran build the 628 kilometer long railway line between the port of Chabahar, which India is helping Iran to develop, and connecting this railway line with Zahidan, and then to take it to a place, Zangraj, in Afghanistan. But now, a week ago, Iranians have made it clear that they were expecting India to make progress. India hasn't made the progress, and so they are starting the work on the pipeline itself, on the railway line itself. But then a parallel development has also taken place, and that parallel development is that Farzad gas and oil field, which Indian companies had a concession. 3 Indian companies helped develop both oil and gas in 2008. Iranians are starting the work without the Indian companies, and they say Indian companies can join later. So these are the two developments which have happened in literally 7-8 days.
So what was the hindering factor for India in this?
I think the Indians...
I've seen a tweet by one of the Indian politicians suggesting that this was the Ministry of Finance delaying finance coming out for this project. Is that the reason?
Indians were supposed to finance as well in both the projects. I mean, in case of the Farzad oil and gas field, Indians in 2019 put up a $5.6 billion plan of investment, and Iranians were not impressed out of it. But I think more than the financial problems, the problem is this, that India has a strategic relationship with the United States, and even if India didn't have a strategic relationship with the United States, India's companies have to do business, India's financial institutions have to do business with the United States, and United States has very specifically defined sanctions that any institution, companies, corporate bodies, whether public sector or private, that actually deal with Iran, they impose sanctions, and also all the dollar denomination transactions are cleared from New York.
So I'm a bit confused about this, because in 2018 the US government gave India exemptions from the Chabahar port. So why was India not allowed to progress on this?
Which we must admit was a huge success on part of the Indian diplomacy, because these are unusual waivers which India was able to obtain from the Trump administration. But perhaps even in the presence of the waivers, Indians are finding difficulty for some of the clearance of the material, equipment and machinery which they wanted to bring in for the Chabahar-Zahidan rail line. And also I have read somewhere that the waiver which India got doesn't cover the metal artifacts or metal equipment, or the or the iron thing which India has to basically bring in to support this railway line. But I think the Iran has got emboldened because of its growing strategic relationship with China. Though both India and China Chinese leadership visited. You know, when in January of 2016, Xi Jinping visited Iran with the offer of $400 billion of investment, $280 billion for the oil, spread over 25 years, but $280 billion for the oil imports, oil-related products, and $120 billion for structural investments. But let me add this. But even in 2016, even the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also visited, Tehran. So there has been a sort of a competition going on, and it looks that Iranians, for some reasons, were more trusting the Indians because they thought that Indians have a greater capability of obtaining waivers from United States given their relationship, and they were also somehow other suspicious of the Chinese, but now they are putting more weight into the Chinese initiative.
So if the announcement of the $400 billion was actually done in January 2016, why are Indian newspapers now talking about this and asking the government why this has happened and why has there been a tensions between the US-Iranian relations right now, India-Iranian relations right now?
What happened is this, that between 2016 when the Chinese arrived, first of all it is important to know that both Indians and Chinese arrived with their offers to Tehran when the joint comprehensive, this JCPOA, which is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is in fact in short is the Iran-US nuclear deal, came into existence because of the 8-year negotiation with Obama administration. Once it was clear that US imposed sanctions will actually be relaxed on Iran, both India and China renewed their interest. So it is not only India but also China was looking at what's going to happen. So both arrived in Tehran with their offers, but China and Iran somehow or the other did not make sufficient progress between 2016 and 2020. But now in 2020, Chinese are making quick progress with Iranians, perhaps because Chinese have also realized that United States is trying to encircle them at multiple levels. So they are actually approaching Iran with a new vigor. The thing was leaked out in the media when Jawad Zarif, who was the Iran's foreign minister, had to defend the China-Iran strategic moves in the Iranian Majlis or the parliament when the hardliners accused Jawad Zarif and the Iranian government of Hassan Rouhani that you're not being transparent on the whole thing and you're hiding the facts. So the foreign minister and the Iranian government comes back and says, look, we're not hiding anything. And then the forward movement of the Iran-China strategic relationship is becoming more obvious.
So do you think the Indians can take up where they left off in 2016 if Biden wins the next general election? If we have President Biden?
Now the Indian foreign policy is in a quandary. They are expecting that and now everyone is actually looking at the US election. China is looking at the US election, Pakistan is looking at the US election, India is looking at the US election, Saudis are looking at the US election, Israelis are looking at the US election, all for different reasons. So Indian foreign policy is looking, if Joe Biden wins, which is a likelihood, not certain but a likelihood, then the sanctions on Iran will definitely be eased. And if the sanctions will be eased, then India of course can move very quickly on its pending work on Chabahar port, Chabahar-Zahidan rail line into Afghanistan, and also the gas project. But on the other hand, the Indian political leadership, Narendra Modi, RSS and BJP, have invested heavily into a possible Trump victory. If you look at the Trump Howdy event in Houston last year. So India is now in a quandary, what will happen. So everything is in a stasis at the moment.
Who do you think they're actually supporting? I mean, inside their hearts, it's obviously a speculation on your part, but where do you think the India Foreign Office, who would their vote be with?
I think they will now be actually putting the eggs on both sides. I think this has always been the argument both in India and Pakistan. I mean, Indians have always been, see, if you look at the Indian electorate, the Indian diaspora, the Indian communities within the United States, the non-resident Indians, they have always, for their own reasons, supported the democratic candidates, because of course the Indians are a small minority in India. In United States, they're a very progressive, very educated, sophisticated and minority, which is very well represented in professional subjects, in professions like medicine and engineering, in IT, technology, academia. So the natural inclination has always been toward the Democratic Party.
Okay, so I'd like to
but the Indian government, has been looking at it for the past, say, 24 months, thinking this Trump will definitely win. So they were putting the eggs into Trump because they thought that the Trump will win. But now when the Trump looks shaky, the Indian government might actually be making revisions in its assessment.
So I'd like to take you away from Chabahar and the $400 billion and back to the tensions and the growing tensions between India and Iran. India has always claimed that it has a civilizational relationship with Iran. I mean, what is the context to that and how is this now being affected?
So Afghanistan is such a, flawed bogey which they keep on using civilizational link. They, whatever civilizational link India had with Iran or with, Afghanistan is in the context of that part of India, the North India, which is now Pakistan, because this is the Muslim link essentially with Iran and with Afghanistan. And given the state of relationship with Muslim and with Islam in India now, this civilizational link, whatever it ever was, had lost its meaning. But they keep on repeating this civilizational link. And but at the same time, they're not able to accommodate Pakistan in whatever relationship they seek with Iran. You see, the Iran's and Afghanistan's huge strategic importance to Indian foreign policy has the basic objective of encirclement of Pakistan, of rejection of interdependability with Pakistan. So Indian economy, Indian establishment, Indian strategy doesn't want to depend on Pakistan, whether it is the Iran, Pakistan, India gas pipeline, whether it is the trade relationship with Central Asia or with Iran, with Afghanistan. I mean, just imagine that if India would have agreed to join the Belt Road Initiative, becoming a part of the CPEC and all that, then India could have a direct access to Iran, to Afghanistan, to Central Asia. But for its own strategic reasons, India doesn't want to basically bring Pakistan into the whole thing.
So on that point, I'd like to ask you, CPEC, Pakistan-China Economic Corridor, was supposed to be the flagship of the BRI. And the initial contracts we got were only $46 billion. I say only because obviously now in the light of the $400 billion contracts that have been signed with Iran, $46 billion seems nothing. Did we sell ourselves short?
No, first of all, the Iran thing of $400 billion is basically spread over 25 years, and $280 billion of that is actually for the purchase of oil and oil products. So that is the oil product which Iran has to sell, has to give to China, and 120 billion is for the investment. And now the second point, when $46 billion of initial investment, which was announced in 2014, has been expanding. It is now probably $70 billion or something like this. And if you talk to people who have the understanding, who are familiar with the subject, this is almost like an open check which China has actually written for Pakistan, and this is continuously expanding. Now, having said this, yes, there is a feeling in Islamabad, a growing feeling that, given the huge strategic importance of CPEC in the larger Belt Road Initiative, and Pakistan is the only reliable partner which cannot be caught down and pressured by United States or by the West. Everybody else, look at it in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Sri Lanka, everybody, Bangladesh, every country can be pressured by United States. Pakistan is the only country that cannot be pressured by United States when it comes to China. And Pakistan is the only country which has this solid geostrategic link with China and a very sustained relationship of trust, deepening trust since 1960s. And Pakistan also guards China's western frontiers, and Pakistan gives stability to China. So Pakistan should have got a better deal. Instead of the loans, it should probably should have got direct investments, foreign direct investments and grants.
Moeed, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.